Hi, welcome back to another episode of the CAD Corner. I'm your instructor, Mr. Crooks, and today we'll be exploring my top 10 basic but favorite one-key shortcuts in AutoCAD. So, AutoCAD is configured to enter data in a myriad of ways, and although these are my favorite ways to use the tools in AutoCAD, by no means is this the only way to use the software. Remember, it is more important to understand the functionality of the tools and commands built into AutoCAD for optimal efficiency. Without further delay, let's get into it. So, let us start with A for the arc tool. And as the name suggests, the arc tool is used to simply create arcs in CAD. Let's look at how we can do this. Now that we're in AutoCAD, let us look at the arc tool. So the arc tool, as we said earlier, can be activated by simply going to the command line and typing A, then hitting enter. That will bring up the arc tool. Alright, so it is asking to specify the start point or the center because of how we had it configured. However, before using the arc tool, one should note that there are different configurations for the arc tool, and depending on the parameters that you know, that is what you would set up for using the arc tool. So you can have it on 3-point, start, center, and end if you know where the start is, the center, and the end. You can also set the arc length. So if you know the specific arc length, that is the portion of the circumference of the circle that the arc sits on, you can go ahead and type that in. You can also use the start, end, and the angle. So if you know what angle you're actually working with, you can go ahead and just type in the angle. You can also use start and end direction, so you can just point the arc in the direction that you want it to go, knowing the start point and the end point. You can also use start, end, and radius. There is center, start, end. There's also center, start, and angle. There's center, start, and length, and you can just continue with an arc. These are all useful and will prove to be handy in various situations when working with the arc tool. But for most of what we're doing in technical drawing, start, center, end, and 3-point is more than enough. So let's look at drawing an arc using start, center, and end. So we're gonna select that. Then we're gonna say specify the center point. You specify the center point, then you're going to pick, then it's gonna ask you for the start point. And remember, the arc tool always draws counterclockwise. See? It will always start over once it completes as a circle. Because remember, an arc is a portion of a circle's circumference. So that's the arc tool. Next up, we have the circle tool, and this simply creates circles. So let us go over to CAD and look at this. Back over in CAD, we are going to now ensure that we're on our command box, our command dialog. We're going to hit C for circle tool, hit enter, and then it's asking us to specify where we want the center point of our circle to be. If we had a line, we could snap our center point to the end of the line, the center of the line, intersection of two lines, or a line and an arc, wherever. But for now, we're just gonna click and drag out a circle. Now notice it stays attached, and this circle is being created by the radius. Alright, so if you have a radius of, let's say, 50 millimeters, you type 50, hit enter, and this circle, the radius is 50, diameter is 100, and the circumference is 314.2. Next up we have B, for blocks, creating blocks. This is where you create or combine defined objects into one. Let's head on over to CAD where we look at an example of a block and how we can use it. So we're back here in CAD and we'll be looking at the block tool or the block command. And to activate this, all you have to do is hit B, enter, and this brings up the block dialog. So right here, you would have to name this block, right? But before we get into that, let us look back at the bunch of stuff I have here. It's just random geometric shapes and objects. But let us look at them and how they function before I actually turn them into a block. So I'm going to cancel to come out, head back over there and look at it. So here we have a circle, we have a center mark, we have a square, and all of them, as you can see, they're separate and you're able to manipulate them on their own. They're 3 individual objects and you're able to manipulate them on their own. If you go back into the block dialog by hitting B, enter, you'd have to give it a name. So you're going to give it a name. Let us call it circle, or let's call it a square sen. Let's call it a squarescent, whatever that is. Okay. So let us select the objects now. So we're going to select the objects that we want to add to our block. We select the center mark, the circle, and the square. Then we hit enter. Then it brings back us to the dialog. So it tells you that you have 3 objects selected. And then if you want to turn it into a block, all you have to do is hit OK. But notice now what happens. When you go over the object, realize it selects everything at once. Because that's the benefit of having a block. You can merge objects into one solid object. You can copy it, you can paste it, you can do whatever you really want to do with it. Alright, so that is the block tool or the block command. Next up, we have O for offset. This creates concentric circles, parallel lines, and parallel curves. Let's take a quick look at this over in AutoCAD. Alright, so back in CAD, and we're going to look at the offset tool. And the offset tool, as we said, basically gives you a duplicate or a copy, but not really a copy. It just creates an object that is at a certain distance from another object that was created. So in this case, let us use the same object that we used in the previous example, and let us create an offset of this object. So what do? Ensure that our command bar is selected and type O, then hit enter. Then you're going to specify the offset distance. So how far from this object do you want the next object to appear? So I want this object to be 10 millimeters away from the other object. By the time you type 10, the object will appear. But notice, because my cursor is outside of the object, it appears outside of the object. But if I should bring it inside, it will go inside. And it is 10 millimeters on the inside or 10 millimeters on the outside. But I want mine on the outside, so all I have to do is just click and the object will appear on the outside. But notice something else. When you do the first offset, it doesn't automatically go back to just the cursor, the offset command. You're still in the offset dialog. So what you'll have to do is hit escape to exit the offset command, right? But let me show you something that is really handy. If you actually hit enter and you specify the offset distance, it's already near 10, and you select the object that you want to offset. Say we want to offset the circle now, right? If you actually hit select the circle, you specify the point on the outside, You can click there, and then you can just keep on going. So if you're doing concentric circles, you can draw them quite easily. If the circles should be at a specific or set distance from each other, that is on one single plane, right? It's easy to just offset them. All right, so that is it. Offset tool. Next up, we have the ever popular line tool at number 5, and this creates straight line segments. Let's look at this. So we're back over in CAD, where we are looking at our line tool. So our line tool is activated by simply hitting the command line, ensuring that you're on CAD, and typing L, and then hitting enter, and it's going to ask you to specify your first point for your line. However, I'm not going to go ahead and do that. First, I'm going to actually speak quite shortly on the ortho and polar tracking, which are basically helpers for our line tool. Alright, so if we're going to use the line tool, you want it to sort of have direction. So let's go back in and hit L, enter, and click. Let me turn off my ortho for a minute. Notice what happens. I am on the center line layer, and the center line is being drawn at any angle. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on the ortho now, and then the ortho restricts it to 90-degree increments. Alright, so 90-degree increments. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type 50 for this line segment. I'm going to drag up, and then I'm going to type 50 for that line segment, 50 again, and then to close the line tool, or to close the lines, I press C, enter, and it brings it to a close. And then if you hover over each line, you'll see that each segment is its own line. Right, so the line tool draws separate line segments. Alright, quite simple. Next, we have P for the pan tool, and this creates grips, or it creates a grip where you can pan around and move around to look at various areas of the drawing or drawings. Let's look at this. Okay, so we're back here in CAD, and now we're looking at the pan tool. The pan tool is a very useful tool in CAD. It may be accessed and it may be brought up several different ways, but one of my favorite ways is to actually type the command P to bring it up. Why? Because sometimes you may be in a next dialogue or something, or maybe you don't have a menu or the call out menu is displayed or whatever, but you know that P on the keyboard brings it up. So that makes it quite easy. So let's look at this in depth now. Now you may have a drawing that you're looking at, and you may have another drawing somewhere off to the left of the screen, and it is just not showing. Now one would argue that you could use the scroll wheel on the mouse and depress it, and then that would bring up the pan tool, and then you could just pan. But suppose now you want it to move further, you'd have to depress it again, and keep on pressing and pressing. So the advantage now of using P for pan, so P, enter, is that it stays on. So this pan tool stays on, and you're just on pan mode until you hit escape to come out. So that is the advantage of using the P command for the pan tool. So hit escape to come out, and you're back to your regular cursor for drawing. At number 7, we have X for the explode tool. This breaks up a compound object into simpler objects or simpler components. Let's look at this. Alright, so back over here in CAD, and we're going to look at the explode command. And explode, no, not that type of explosion. talking about explode, wherein you have a geometrical shape such as a square, but you can see that a square is just 4 sides or 4 line segments. However, if you should use the polygon tool and draw a square, you'll just have one solid shape. But suppose it is that you want to turn this into 4 line segments. Well, never fear, because the explode command is here. So you just hit X, enter, and then you select the object that you want to explode. You select the square, hit enter, and then it tells you that now you're looking at 4 line segments. So you can go ahead and manipulate this square, which is just 4 line segments, in any way you want. So you can select them, move them, do whatever you want to it. Alright, so that is the explode command. E is for the erase tool, and this comes in at number 8. This removes objects from the drawing. Let's look at this and where this will be more advantageous than something, let's say, like the trim tool. Alright, so it is that time now when we'll be looking at the erase tool. And the erase tool is simple and straightforward, right? It erases whatever object you select. So let's look at this now. So you hit E, enter, then you're going to go ahead and select whatever you want erased. So let's say I'm erasing the top and the bottom lines, and then I hit enter, and just like that you would have erased the 2 lines. So simple and straightforward. The erase tool, you hit E, enter, select whatever objects you're erasing, and hit enter, and just like that they disappear. At number 9, we have Z for the zoom tool. This increases or decreases the magnification view of the current viewport. So whatever you're looking at within the viewport or on the model space, you hit Z for the zoom tool and increase the size or decrease the size. Let's look at this. So as we said, Z now is for the zoom tool, and just imagine this scenario. You're in CAD and you're looking at a drawing and you want to actually see it magnified. How would you do that? Rather easily, you can use the Z tool. So you hit Z on the command line, enter, and you then specify where or how you want the zoom to actually be done. So you can actually zoom to scale. You can zoom to a specific scale if you know your dimensions and such. You can zoom to an object. You can zoom all. So you can zoom to all. So if you Z, so that will show you every single thing on a drawing, on a sheet, or in the modeling space in this case, right? So if you zoom all, so it fits every single drawing. Right, then you can hit enter to go back in that command, and you can zoom center. So zoom center, and you specify the center point. So let's say, for example, I want to zoom to the center point of this object. So I specify here as a center, and it tells me what the magnification will be, and then I hit enter. So it shifts it to the center, right? So if I hit enter again, if I zoom extents, it shows me the extents of the drawing. Hit enter to go back in the zoom tool. I can zoom an object, and if I select the object, this as the object, and hit enter, so it zooms in on that object. So there are many ways to zoom, but remember, you get to all of them by using Z, and then you select after that and hit enter. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Zoom tool, very handy. And finally, we're at number 10, where we see F for the Fillet Tool. And no, we're not talking about cutlets of fish or chicken. We're talking about F for the Fillet Tool, where we round edges of objects. Alright, let's look at this in CAD. Alright, so now we're at the Fillet Tool. So the Fillet Tool, basically what the Fillet Tool does is it takes the sharp edges of a drawing. In this case, this is one complete object, which is a polygon, and it will take that sharp edge of this polygon and it will round it. So this polygon is drawn and it is 45 millimeters from the center to the edge. So if you're working with a fillet, you have to consider the size or the scale. So basically I'm going to create a easy fillet right here of a radius of maybe say 4 or 5 millimeters. Let's work with 4. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure my command bar is selected, or my command line. I'm going to hit F, enter, and then it is going to ask me to either type in the radius. You need to let AutoCAD know the radius for your fillet, so I'm going to let it know that I want to use 4 millimeters for the radius. Hit enter. Then I'm going to select the first object, then select the second object, and quite easily you can see right there that it created a fillet. So I hit, if I want to create a next fillet, you don't have to do anything but hit enter, select the first object and the second object, and AutoCAD automatically remembers the last radius you entered, and you can keep on going right around your object, creating similar fillet as you go along. And there you have a fully rounded, but in the corners, polygon, which is a hexagon. So you have a rounded corner hexagon, if that's ever useful. So that's the Fillet Tool. And the Fillet Tool, remember that welded joints, and also when you have objects with really sharp edges, they need being fillet. So that's the Fillet Tool. Alright, but it wouldn't be right if we never tossed in an extra one. So the extra one is J for the joint tool, and this is very handy when you want to move large groups of objects. You just join them all together and move them, or otherwise you can actually do the opposite of joining them and use X to explode them and move single or individual components. But let's look at this join tool by hitting J over in AutoCAD. So as the name suggests, the join tool is simply a tool that combines line segments. Now you may look at this and think that, oh, this is a polygon or a quadrilateral, right? But if you check it out, it actually is just 4 lines. Now to make this a polygon or a quadrilateral in this case, you would have to use a join tool. So all you have to do is hit J, enter. Then it's going to ask you to select the source object or multiple objects to join. So all you have to do is go ahead and select all your line segments and then hit enter, and then it will say 4 objects convert into 1 polyline. Right, it's not going to say it's a polygon or name the polygon. It's just going to tell you that it combined 4 objects, which was 4 lines, because it doesn't care if it is a circle, a line, a center mark, whatever it is. It will combine them all together and make a polyline, or a polygon in this case. Now the join tool is different from the blocks tool, because if you create and save a block, you can just insert back from a block. If you want to actually create a duplicate of this, you would have to copy it. So that's the difference between the block tool and the join tool. So when you combine objects together as a block, you can even save them individually, or you can actually combine them as it would be in the join tool here. But then when you insert a block, you insert it and you'll get a grip. You'll select and choose where the grip you would want the grip to appear, and then you could just put them in. So where it's handy, where you could actually create blocks, is a place like maybe if you wanted to create trees or so and post them on the internet for sale. That's something you could do. Trees or specific shapes, engines, whatever it is. So you'd create and export your blocks, and then you could sell them as resources, right? So developers or people using CAD would not have to create those shapes for themselves. They could actually just use your shapes. So yeah, so there you have it, my top 10 favorite one key shortcuts in CAD. So that was my top 10 basic one key shortcuts in AutoCAD. I hope these will help you to go further on your journey in AutoCAD. I'm interested to know what your top 10 keyboard shortcuts look like. Leave them in the comment section below. Remember to hit like on this video if you found it helpful. Also, go ahead and subscribe to get more content as we explore engineering and technology. Thank you.